Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this. What is today? The 29th day, pushing up on December, Christmas time here of November of Tuesday, the 29th. Also, want to give a big shout out to the U.S. men's soccer team winning over Iran. 1-0. Kudos to them in the World Cup. I'm still not used to the World Cup being in November like this. It's still kind of an oddball type of thing here. But hey, it's great, especially after I heard one of the reporters from Iran try to dress down one of the soccer players for United States for saying uh, mispronouncing Iran, and then he started talking about racism here and everything. And the guy was really cool about it, and he could have came back at that Iranian reporter with the craziness they got going on with threats to the family of the Iran soccer team if they air quote misbehave, which means not standing up for their national anthem. So, but the guy did. He was really cool about it. The player there, and then Tennessee, and then the USA goes on and wins the game. So that was pretty interesting. I mean, I was listening to it here and there while I was working today during the day job. A lot of big college football news. Actually, the college football news is probably better than the NFL as far as today's program. Give you my theory about these coaches that these in-house coaches that take over for really good to legendary coaches. There's a bad precedent for Ryan Day. Uh, uh, you know that is interesting there with Ohio State. Jim Harbaugh. Remember the song "Pickles"? Should I stay or should I go? That's a real argument. Luke Fickell. I didn't catch this yesterday. I guess they were in talks, but Luke Fickell's going to take the Wisconsin job. He's the coach from Cincinnati and a really good Cincinnati program. I was looking at his. He's got a really good resume. Cincinnati has produced some good coaches over the. I mean, Brian Kelly, who's down at LSU, was at Notre Dame. He come from Cincinnati. Luke Fickell come from Cincinnati. Butch Jones wasn't a great head coach, better recruiter than head coach at a major program. But Butch Jones, all those guys came from University of Cincinnati. Hugh Freeze, that was my early favorite to take that job. I'll get into that, my thoughts on Hugh Freeze. But first, like I like to start off with on Tuesday after the weekends that I went through the pro game. I mean, yeah, okay. Jeff Saturday's coached 3 games. Yes, he had clock management issues. Okay, go figure, right? So, anyways, so good scope, bad scope. Where I had a good opinion, where I didn't have not so good opinion. I usually give about 4 or 5 of these every week. This is only the second week of trying this segment here, but I'll start off with this. We'll do the NFL Power 5, and then I'll get to all this college football news. I mean, this is just a lot of stuff with the coaching hires there. And again, want to make that announcement. Andre Gibson, man, really good guest. He will be back tomorrow. I'm going to ask him a few questions, particularly about Billy Napier in Florida and quite a few others that I'm coming up with right now. And Philly sports guy, Jamie Pags, on Thursday. I'm going to ask him about, did he see this team coming? And I'm also going to ask Jamie about Russell Wilson. I mean, he's the only one that made that proclamation. Yeah, I guess you want to say prediction, hot take, that Wilson would be a major disappointment this year. I mean, I really got to give the guy a gold star for that. But let's go to good scope, bad scope. I'll put that on the screen there. Pickles. Andre, if you're watching, Pickles says you're a good guy. Okay, good scope. Dallas sticking to the run over the pass. Last Thursday, they were down by 1 point. Got a little pass happy, if you ask me, in the first half against the Giants. They go back to the run. They play off of that. And guess what? They get a win. They stick with their guns. They pass more than they run. They beat the Giants by 8. Didn't cover that whole point spread, but they did beat the Giants by 8. Bad scope, thinking the Titans with more prep time, being at home, revenge game against Cincinnati, without Jamar Chase, without Joe Mixon, would beat Cincinnati soundly. I was wrong there. Cincinnati simply very good, very underrated run defense for the Cincinnati Bengals. Very good. If the playoffs started today, Tennessee would host Cincinnati again. And I would have to pick Cincinnati. I'm not going to be stupid. I don't see life through Tennessee Titans sunglasses just because I'm out of Nashville. So, yeah, they own the Titans as of right now. Good scope. Spread teams have trouble late in the season as the season turns along. I had to read this again. I can't believe that Michigan went up to Ohio State. I know we're 3 days after the fact. They went up to Ohio State and beat them by 3 touchdowns, going against a quarterback that could be the second pick overall, potentially number 1 pick, and one of the best offenses in the history of Ohio State. So, yeah, spread offenses, you still got to have some power. The power team wins out. In Michigan. Okay, good scope. Ravens should have drafted Justin Fields and moved on from Lamar Jackson. Like former NFL scout Bucky Brooks, got to state that. He also said that. He said that they should have moved on. Now Lamar Jackson's dealing with the hip injury. Yeah, of course you can say, well, Justin Fields is too, but Fields got the same kind of athletic as a Lamar Jackson. Couldn't you imagine Justin Fields with that talent around him? Plus, you're paying him a rookie salary. It would have been a great move. The Ravens had the artillery to do it. They could have moved up. They could have got that draft pick. And I feel like I was right. Now I'm reading that maybe the Ravens are having second thoughts. They don't want to pay him, and they shouldn't. They want to pay Lamar Jackson $250 guaranteed. I just don't see it. I feel like I was right, and so was Bucky Brooks. I want to say he's with the NFL Network. I know he's bounced around, but that was definitely a. And now, of course, they're on the verge of losing the AFC North there. So that's 5 good, bad. Okay, moving right along. Let's go to the Power 5. Let's start with number 5. Buffalo. I still got Buffalo at 5th in the NFL, even after their injuries. You're snowed out of your own city. You fly to Detroit on Sunday. I don't know if they flew back and then flew to Detroit. I think they just stayed in Detroit for 4 days and played a red hot. This is not exaggerating. A red hot Detroit Lions team at home, plays every year. Good win there for them. Still like their pass rush. Von Miller, he's going to be back at some point. He'll be reevaluated. I still think that this is a really good team. They need to work on that running game, or McDermott's gone, in my opinion. But I still got him at 5th. I love me some Josh Allen, man. He's a well of a player. Number 4, Miami. I could probably put Miami at, Number 4, Miami. Had a little bit of a scare with Tua. Got an oddball tackle there at the end. They get up 30-0, and before the 4th quarter, that's how good they are right now. Still love what Jeff Wilson's doing. Still love the defense. They're going to get healthier at defense at some point. I like the fact that they're leaning into that running game, and Tua's just not Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill dependent. He's using Sherfield Pickles, guy I talked about the other day. He's using other players. He's using his tight end. Probably not enough, but I like their balance on offense. Only thing I'm concerned is their left tackle got a little banged up. I don't know how much Armstead is, but with Tua's lack of durability, for lack of a better word, I'm a little concerned about that. Other than that, the guy Stolen Laserbank still leads the NFL in QBR. And we got a new one here. Okay, San Francisco. They are technically leading the NFC West. Seattle lost again last week. The Rams are totally out of it. They're 3-8. Arizona's totally out of it, I think. And I'll get back to Arizona here in a minute. I think that Cliff Kingsbury, I do think that Cliff Kingsbury will get canned at the end of the season. But the first 49ers, they're showing their balance there. Good run pass balance. Christian McCaffrey, defense starting to settle in a little bit more, getting healthier by the week. Had a shutout against the Saints last week. Got them at number 3. Number 2, of course, Philadelphia, 10-1. I like what Philadelphia did last week. They can win close games, a low score, and we saw that against the Colts on the road. They can win shootouts. We saw that against the Green Bay. Now I'm going to talk to Philly sports guy Jamie Pags Thursday. What does he contribute to this kind of success from a team building standpoint? What does he contribute to this kind of success? Hey, 10-1 is 10-1. They have the tiebreaker over Minnesota for the 1 seed. So because they beat Minnesota in week 2 soundly. Really good offense. They got the best offensive line in the NFL. They got a above average defensive line. They got one of the best 1-2 cornerback combos in the NFL. They got an MVP candidate. Who was it? Jalen Hurts ran for 150, threw for 150 last week or Sunday night. And of course, Kansas City at number 1, still around the top 5 run defense. And they've got Juju Smith-Schuster back. They've got and Travis Kelce. I mean, you're putting people on him left and right. He still continues to score at ease. He's had 4 touchdowns the last 2 games there. By the way, there's a stat on, I tell you, Patrick Mahomes. This guy, Patrick Mahomes, is on pace for 5,540 yards this season. That would be a new NFL record. That would probably give him the MVP. Another MVP. I mean, all those bad years with mediocre quarterbacks. I mean, Andy Reid is really getting a special player in Patrick Mahomes. Really good at stopping. I love this game this week, guys. The Kansas City Chiefs will play Cincinnati. Another big game for Cincinnati. I'm leaning heavily, even though the Chiefs also lost 2 times in a row to this Cincinnati team. Even with Jamar Chase be back next week, very likely. I still like Kansas City. They look like they barely broke a sweat against the Rams on Sunday. They're my number 1 team in my Power 5. Kansas City number 1, Philadelphia number 2, San Francisco number 3, Miami number 4, Buffalo number 5. Maybe could I put a Minnesota in there? Yeah, could I put a Dallas Cowboys in there? Maybe. I just can't trust Dallas, I just can't trust Dallas right now to put them in that top 5. They need to rack up a few more wins, maybe a win over Philadelphia and come back and win that division. Then maybe I'll slide a Dallas Cowboy team in there. Okay. All right. I'm trying to see which way. I'll tell you what. We're going to go to college football here in just a minute, folks. I'll be back in a minute 19 just after this quick announcement here on SportsScope. Hello, SportsScope followers. After 5 years of doing this program once a week, balancing a 60-hour work week job, I've decided to do the program 5 days a week, 1 hour a night, taking a significant pay cut. So I've started a Patreon page, which is Patreon, Patreon/SportsScope, spelled the same way at the bottom of the screen you see there. For $5 a month, 17 cents a day, you can help support the program. You ask yourself, why SportsScope? Well, I bring in such big names such as Al Borges, former Auburn offensive coordinator, and I cover the big news in sports that the corporate media will not cover. If you want to contribute more than $5 a month, you can go use the Cash App. The cash tag is Sports Scope, again, spelled the same way. Or you can go to the Zelle app, sportscope@gmail.com. SportsScope has about 5,000 followers and growing. If you want to advertise on the program, you can email me. The word is SportsScope, spelled the same way again, @gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the program. Okay, I'm back here live. Philly says, has a glide path to the NFC Championship. Yeah. Hey, man, you play the schedule that's in front of you. They've got a very good general manager there. The Eagles are doing things the right way. They're putting their money in the right spots. In the so-so spots like wide receiver, the cap hit for an A.J. Brown, it's not that bad. I mean, $5 million, that's cheap for a guy that's going to be making $20 million. Howie Roseman, really got to tip your hat to him. Pickle says Tua's playing winning football. He says Vrabel got out coached. I will say this about Mike Vrabel. If they play again, and there is a very, very good chance, even though Cincinnati has a murder's row schedule coming up. I mean, we're talking Cleveland again with Deshaun Watson 2 games under his belt, plus Baltimore, who's very physical and already beat them, plus Buffalo, plus Kansas City coming up. Okay, so that is a very difficult schedule, and technically they're tied for first, but Baltimore has the lead right now. So there's no guarantee that they're even going to get in the playoffs. If they do, they could be that last wild card. But that being said, Mike Vrabel, he is going to have to face the fact that he can't play bully ball with the Cincinnati Bengals. You cannot get push off that offensive line. 2 yards a carry for Derrick Henry. His only really big run was off of a screen pass. That's got to be the game plan. They have better defensive line personnel than Tennessee. He should have caught that early. And in the second half, went into a short passing game and possibly use a Ryan Tannehill as a runner. I don't know if his ankle's still bothering him. So, yes, I can agree that he did get out coached for that. And Zach Taylor's not a very good coach, you know. So that's a fair thought there, Pickles. That is a fair thought. Fair thought. Okay. Pickles says, okay, now let's start off with biggest game of the week. Both sports, Ohio State, Michigan. Very big game. Both teams undefeated, first time since 2006. I remember that. I was living in Laughlin, Nevada at the time, talking to a coach who from Michigan, a football coach and a PE teacher in Laughlin, Nevada about that. And, of course, you know, Ohio State wins a close one. They beat Michigan in a shootout. This was back in 2006. And, of course, they got beat by Urban Meyer, ironically, Florida team in the national championship game that year. Just a little personal history. Okay, so Michigan goes up and beats Ohio State by 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns in Ohio State with that offense and that draft pick. Now their quarterback is a 5-star guy, McCartney, I think is his name, for Michigan. Michigan with the power running game. What did I say a couple of weeks ago? Good offensive line, power running game. How about spread? Ohio State fires their defensive coordinator last year. They do all these adjustments, right? And what happened? Well, Michigan, even with their running back, remember what I said about even with their running back out, goes up there and beats them. And quite frankly, the really big plays, they got torched on the secondary. Big plays there in the a couple of deep balls there. It's not like they dominated in the running game in the first half. It was really long passes, but the fact that there was hardly any pushback from Ohio State in the second half, I'm still stunned about it, and that's 72 hours ago. But that's my thing about the spreads. Here's another another little tidbit from that. Okay, coaches taking over for legends. You can call Urban Meyer anything you want to, but a bad coach is not that thing to call him. Urban Meyer has probably the highest winning percentage in the history of college football. He's got 3 national championships. Okay. That is up there with Tom Osborne. That's not Nick Saban. But if you look for the amount of games he coached, winning percentage wise, he's very good. He wears himself out. He's very good. Okay. And Ryan Day, who, by the way, who, takes over this job, and a little backstory here between Ryan Day and I'll explain my bigger point here. There's a little bit of a backstory here with Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh. Okay, there was a lot of issues with the 2020. Remember, this is his second year, right? It's his second year. Remember, he took over in 2019 with Urban Meyer's culture, with Urban Meyer players. Okay, and according to Bucknuts, but this was later confirmed by ESPN, Dave was speaking there at Big Coaches Conference call earlier. This was back 2 years ago, the COVID year, and was interrupted by, this is a coaches call in the Big Ten here. Harbaugh accused the Buckeyes of breaking the rules for providing impermissible on-the-field instructions before it was allowed. That accusation didn't sit well with then Brian Day. He says, how about I worry about my team and you worry about yours, Day said to Harbaugh. But Day's frustration with Harbaugh didn't end on that conference call and repeatedly spilled over, this is a report here, over into the football facility. During a team meet after the call, Day reportedly told the players Michigan better hope for a mercy rule this year because we're going to hang 100 on them. Day's comments were confirmed by ESPN on Thursday. And then, of course, Harbaugh comes out with the famous guy acts like he hit a triple born on third base. You inherit because of Urban Meyer's, the fallout with the controversy around Urban Meyer and the coach and the domestic and all that. And he just up and retires and leaves you with just a flood of talent there. And of course, they beat Michigan pretty good in 2019. Remember in 2020, which was his second year, right? His second year, the game got canceled because that was COVID. The game was canceled. Well, what's the next time they played? That was last year in 2021. Michigan beat them by double digits. What's the game after that? Well, that was the Saturday where they beat them by 3 touchdowns. And so now it goes to my theory, taking over for a legend, most of these coaches fall short, and it's usually between the first year and the third year. It's usually the first year is great. The first year is great. You still have it. The first year is off the hook, right? But then, things start to teeter off, and then you start to get, for example, okay, Butch Davis, this guy for Miami University, 1995 to 2000, builds a powerhouse Miami Hurricane team in 2000, decent season there. But he takes a job in Cleveland, builds that powerhouse team. Then Larry Coker takes over with all these players that Butch Davis built up. They have one of the greatest individual years of all time in 2001. In 2002, they barely lose the national championship. Larry Coker was fired just a few short years after that. And then that is that, right? So then you have a guy like Mike Davis. This is college basketball. He takes over for Bob Knight. In 2000, Bob Knight, legendary coach, multiple national championships with Indiana. less than 2 seasons after he was assaulting a student or something, I don't know, being Bob Knight, right? So Mike Davis gets to the national championship game. Only a few short years later, was fired from Indiana. Here's a good one. Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer, first year a little rough there, but still with Jimmy Johnson's culture, his players, they go on and win the Super Bowl in 1995, right? And then only a few short years later, he was gone. They never recovered really at Dallas, except for with Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells leaves in 2006. Okay, they finally get another big name coach, right? Well, he leaves in 2006. There's some fallout with Jerry Jones. Go figure, right? So he leaves then, and then Wade Phillips takes over. Well, you know what they did in 2006? They went 13-3. Of course, they get put out in the first round. Wade Phillips is fired just a few short years later. And you just see this time and time and time again. You never want to be the guy who follows the guy. There's very rarely the big name coach who just happens to be in the building. It just very rarely is that the case. Those are examples in multiple sports here. I can go on, trust me. But I think Ryan Day's going to fall under that category of a guy that, by the way, when Urban Meyer was doing the post-game show, people were hollering, "Come back, Urban, pop, 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 pop." They don't care about none of that stuff he did in Jacksonville. They know what he did for Ohio State, win a national championship, a couple undefeated seasons. He was dominant. And the Big Ten was down, really down then. But this is... So that's one angle. That's one angle. One take from Ryan Day. And, man, this guy's recruited like nobody's business. Urban Meyer also left him a flood of players. Look at all these Ohio State wide receivers in the league. Garrett Wilson had a great game for the Jets Sunday. 2 touchdowns for him. Michael Thomas. I mean, we can go on. Lattimore, the cornerback there. Just one. Olave with the New Orleans Saints. I mean, just one good player. Running backs there. Zeke Elliott. I mean, just really good players there. And NFL players. But so the other side of this, so what do you do? What do you do if you're Jim Harbaugh? Jim Harbaugh was an inch away, guys. He was an inch away from being fired. Right around that time, right around about 2 years ago, So he gets 2 straight wins over Ohio State. They got to the playoff last year. I think they're going to beat Purdue Saturday. They're going to go to the playoff this year and probably lose. But, he's been at Michigan since 2015, almost forced out. Like I said, Urban Meyer retires. James Franklin was a threat. I feel like Franklin at Penn State has kind of leveled off. You know what you got out of James Franklin. He's leveled off, okay? Ryan Day's already showing vulnerability in the physical. Let me ask you something. Ohio State, how much they really – I'm going to go over these SEC hires here in a minute. How much does Ohio State really have to get up a year for a game? Maybe for Penn State, maybe for Notre Dame, obviously for Michigan State. What is that, 3 times? 3 times. When I go over this Ole Miss hire, it's not even close now compared to the SEC. Anyways, so that Harbaugh, my thing about him is he listened to Minnesota last year, the Vikings. He listened to the Vikings last year, and he's still not quite recruiting at Ohio State level or an SEC level. So he's been there 7 years, but he's just now proven that he's the man, We was hoping he would do this 3 or 4 years ago. This is what I was expecting because he's crazy. You know, he is a madman when it comes to competitive edge and wanting to win. And you think about sleeping over at a recruit's house, doing everything just to the edge of legality of recruiting. Going to Bo Schembechler's grave before the game and getting smoked. He almost beat Urban Meyer a few times. Remember, it was one bad call there. But my point is that he's still not quite got the recruits. I think it's going to take another year or two. Mind you, folks, these kids are getting recruited in the 8th grade sometimes. That's in rare formation. That's Arch Manning type of stuff, right? But when you start looking in the 9th grade, 10th, so I'm looking at the recruiting, and Ohio State's still beating Michigan in recruiting. Ohio State with Ron Day, they haven't got past the top 10. They're usually in the top 5. Michigan, I think they got a top 5 once, but they're still around the top 20. They do have a 5-star quarterback in there now. Really good offensive line. And maybe this will, my point is the aftermath of this may take another 2 years. Does he want to wait at 58? Does he want to wait till 61 or 62 to stay at Michigan and get those kind of players to put him over the top to compete realistically with a Georgia, with a team from the South, the SEC, a good Clemson team? Right now, I do not think he can do that. I do not think he can do that. I don't think they're going to beat Georgia. So you have to look at that aspect of it, and you have to look at the other aspect of it, that jobs are going to come calling in the NFL. Maybe he's ticked off enough where he feels like, well, I did what I said I was going to do. I got them to the playoff. I beat Ohio State twice. Okay. I did that. They stripped my money, and I didn't appreciate that. Made me fire assistants. Both necessary. The team was slow. They looked. They couldn't find the quarterback. They went through what A&M's going through. A&M, just like I predicted, they have fired their offensive coordinator. Jimbo Fisher has. Okay, so you got to look at all this. Does he stay or does he go? I'm just laying out the horizon for him. For him to win a national championship, they're probably going to be 2 to 3 more years realistically, because the recruiting has to get better, in my opinion, to win a national championship, not just to win the Big Ten. Could they win it this year? They would have to have a lot of breaks to beat that Georgia team. I really do think so. That they are not in the league with Georgia right now. I saw that last year. The flip side, okay, I think that Sean Payton will take that Charger job if it's offered. Okay. I think Payton will take that Charger job, work with Josh Herbert. Now, notably, he is familiar with these young quarterbacks in the NFL, which brings up my next point. I'm almost for certain that Arizona job will be available. Kyler Murray's already taken shots at Cliff Kingsbury. An opportunity to work with Kyler Murray and go and get out of that cold Ann Arbor, Michigan, and go to Phoenix for a few years. Okay? Go to Phoenix for a few years and compete with your old foe, the 49er team. He didn't get along with the owner pretty well there. And work with and put a hybrid system in there, which he can do it, and work with Kyler Murray. I think that could be an option for him. Kyler Murray, I think, is a franchise guy. I've seen him go through his reps. I think he would respect the Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh's been to the Super Bowl. Okay. He's won at the highest levels. He hasn't won a Super Bowl and a national championship yet. But so that is an option. I don't think he'll take a Colts job and go work for his former team he used to play for. I don't think he'll do that and work for Mr. Irsay, because they need to get a quarterback. So if he does, in my opinion, take an NFL job, if here's a wild card. Now, if that Buffalo job comes open, because Josh Allen's a special player, he may take that Buffalo job with Josh Allen. Because I'm the only person saying this, but I pride the show on being the most influential in the country. If Sean McDermott don't get to the Super Bowl and win it, they will fire him. If they don't get to the Super Bowl, at least get there, I think he'll get fired. I think he'll be fired this year. He's had 5 years to get that running game right. And one thing that Harbaugh likes is a physical, hard-nosed run blocking football team. So possibly only because it's Josh Allen was the reason why he would want to go up there. That's a big if. That's a big if. I still think Buffalo has a clean shot to get to the Super Bowl, still and win it, even with their run game issues. I think Von Miller will come back, but that still does, needs to be talked about. All right. So you look at again, Arizona Cardinals, Buffalo Bills. Arizona Cardinals, Buffalo Bills, preferably the Cardinals more than anything, the more likelihood to come open. But the reason why I say that is the owner was very irritated that they got off to 7-0, 8-0 last. They got off to a really good start last year, and they faltered in the playoffs. That goes with that spread offense that I've been telling you about. That Rex Ryan, of all people, and he made a good point. He said these teams start off high, and then they work themselves down. You could say, well, Murray got injured or whatever. Whatever. That's what happened. That's what happened this year. Except this year, they didn't really get off to that great a start. So I do think that would happen. I think that Harbaugh will give this some serious thought because of last year. Okay. The flip side is, does Harbaugh really want to deal with another owner? He's got a quirky personality. If you're winning, people stay the bleep out of your way, not unless you're getting in trouble in college football. So I think he's going to have it made, but guy like Luke Fickell's a good coach. I'm going to talk about his resume here in a minute, who's taken over up at Wisconsin. All right. And Matt Rule in Nebraska, that's not going to be an easy out. But I do think he's going to get the better end of Ron Day. I do think that, because he's not Urban Meyer. And I said that at the beginning. And I thought maybe I was wrong, but now I'm starting to see it, because Ohio State really don't play anybody. They really don't play anybody. Sometimes they'll play in Oklahoma. I get it. Notre Dame is usually overrated. It's just how much they're overrated. This Notre Dame team lost to Marshall this year. So, yeah, they're pretty overrated. I do like Brian Kelly as a coach, but they're typically an overrated football team. So it is something to be think of. And Pickle says Kingsbury on death row job-wise. Yeah, Kingsbury's on death row. By the way, this year, love these Hard Knocks in season Hard Knocks. Last week in Mexico City, an offensive line coach for Arizona groped a woman while they were in Mexico City. He was fired on the spot. Just a little bit mentioned about it in Hard Knocks. You're starting to see the end season. You're starting to see the fallout with players. DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray fall out there. It's really interesting. It's very dramatic, to say the least. You're starting to see it. I watched it last year, and you could tell Jim Irsay was just beside himself when the Colts lost their last regular season game when they should have beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. He went off the deep end. Of course, we know what happened. They ended up trading Carson Wentz to the Washington Commanders and acquiring Matt Ryan, and of course later on firing the head coach, the offensive coordinator, then the head coach. So yeah, Hard Knocks is pretty interesting. Could we see that being made on Hard Knocks? I don't know. It would be good for the NFL. It'd be good drama. I don't see anybody get fired, but I mean, it's just the nature of the beast This is the business we choose. What was that off of, Pickles? Wasn't that off of, I think that was off of Godfather. Ooh, that's a mouthful. Okay. So does he stay or does he go? My final opinion, my final answer. Remember that from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I think he'll probably hang around Michigan a few more years. I think he's probably going to try to win that national championship. They may win it this year. I doubt it. I do think that there are a few players short here. But again, I think now that they're starting to beat Ohio State regularly, they're going to get some of those Ohio State players and push them into the top 5, the top 3. Now, mind you, Ohio State did beat Alabama in 2015 and went on and beat Oregon for the national championship. So it can be done. It can be done, but it's harder to get them to go to Michigan than Ohio State has just got a really good amount of recruits there. They've done a good job from Urban Meyer to Ryan Day. That's why people ain't really mentioned anything about Ryan Day. But this right here, people are mad. People are mad about losing the 3 touchdowns at home to a team, your biggest rival and one of the biggest ones in all of football. Okay, speaking of big rivals, let's go to Auburn. So Auburn hires, again, you listen to your first instinct in life, right, Pickles? I said that was probably going to be the best hire, would be Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze, mind you, he beat Alabama twice. And that's what I was thinking about Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, he's 8-4 this year, okay, at Ole Miss. And all this talk about Lane Kiffin this and Lane Kiffin that distraction cost them to lose to to Mississippi State, another big in-state rivalry there. But Hugh Freeze, now we know that he got some trouble. There were some NCAA investigations about the recruitment of Laremy Tunsil and all that. We also know about the prostitution thing, him talking about the prostitution thing and everything. That was, he resigned, okay? Freeze resigned so he wouldn't, so the school wouldn't fire him and have to deal with that. And so he goes to Liberty. He's cast off the Liberty for 4 seasons. You know, he's 34-15 with the Trail Bowl, but he spent 5, and check this out, Pickles, 5 seasons as Ole Miss coach. He beat Alabama twice and he won a Sugar Bowl. And he got Ole Miss as high up as number 3 in the polls. Now, that didn't happen when they had Eli bleeping Manning there. That didn't happen then. That didn't happen then. So Hugh Freeze is a big-time coach, man. He's going to get some players at Auburn, okay? So, yes, it's and you know, people say, what about his baggage? Well, Kiffin's got baggage. Deion Sanders, who is talking to Colorado, he's got baggage. We talked about his stuff at it just came to my attention last week. I brought it up here on the program last week. At the prep school here, the academy that he was working at, supposedly hit a chancellor or something like that. Academic violations, just violations. When you're dealing with type A personalities, things are going to happen, okay? They're going to push that envelope in recruiting because these guys are always looking for an edge. Bill Belichick's got baggage. You know, Nick Saban's got baggage. According to Jimbo Fisher, when Nick Saban mentioned that Texas A&M bought their players in the offseason, Jimbo Fisher says, yeah, you see why he don't keep his assistants long. He says, there's a lot I can say about him. That's why I ain't worked with him no more. So there's some baggage there. If you're trying to win and you're trying to win big, Urban Meyer's got baggage. He's got all kinds of bags. I mean, Urban Meyer needs a back brace for all the bags he's carrying, right? But what do all these guys got in common? They win and they win big. The baggage is not too much. You know, it's not over the top baggage. You know, it's not Jerry Sandusky baggage or anything like Joe Petrino. But there's every coach you look at, there's some kind of baggage. Les Miles, Ed Orgeron, national championship. I wouldn't be surprised if Brian Kelly didn't have some baggage. He had his criticisms. He had his temper problems. He was getting really close to getting fired at Notre Dame. Then he turned it around initially, and Kiffin, and of course he got a raise. He was buffing them, but I think he would have took that job because that's who Kiffin is, Pickles. I think he would have took it, but Ole Miss got a raise, and Pickles says they've hidden the recruiting violations at Alabama. There, guy used to coach for Tennessee. I can't remember his name. He was a defensive coordinator. Doug Matthews, I think is his name. I think he worked for Johnny Maters in the early 80s. He says, if you're not pushing it right up, I'm on this table, right? If you're not pushing the envelope right to the end of the table of recruiting violation, you're not winning. You're not. He says you really, really have to push that envelope. I mean, you got to push it as far as you can push it. So Hugh Freeze is an excellent coach. So I started thinking about this. Think about the SEC West now. Just when you say it ain't bad enough, it gets even worse. And thank God in 2026, we're going to have a 12-team playoff. Okay. But you think about this. So you've got Hugh Freeze at Auburn, Nick Saban at Alabama. All right. Brian Kelly, who is in the championship game at LSU, proved that he can coach in this league. All right. You got him at LSU. You got Lane Kiffin, who is, they said he's got like the best record through 2 years at Ole Miss. So I guess that's something. But he's no slouch as much as I throw him under the bus. You got Mike Leach, by the way, who beat Lane Kiffin, who beat A&M with all those plays. You got him at Mississippi State. You got Jimbo Fisher, although he had a bad year. You got him at Texas A&M, and even Sam Pittman at Arkansas. Where is the easy out there? Sam Pittman. So look what Alabama's got to go through now just to get to the conference championship. Forget winning it. Forget getting past Georgia with all their top first-round draft picks. That's just your Western Conference. Again, I mean, Brian Kelly, Sam Pittman, Lane Kiffin, Hugh Freeze, I mean, this is unbelievable. That's Murder's Row, man. That's just in the West. And I guess you could say Vanderbilt's probably still, but Vanderbilt beat Florida. If you want to go to the East, Vanderbilt's still weak. Missouri's pretty mediocre at times. But just the West, I mean, that is really hard. Man. If you play Alabama, then you got to play LSU. So you get up, you win both of them. And then you got to go play Auburn. You're going to lose one of them. I don't care what team you got. You play them three teams. I don't care if it's home, away, or all three at home. You're going to lose one of them. You think Ohio State's going to go 3-0 with that? That's unbelievable, man. So it's a really good division. It's so bleeping competitive, man. I mean, geez, but these guys get a lot of money. I had Al Borges here. Al Borges, Deny the Tiger. I'm going to get into that book here in a little bit. I'm trying to finish up my Jimmy Johnson book here. But I remember what he said. He said, well, Auburn took care of me. And he was a coordinator back in 2004. He said, Auburn take care of you. In other words, they were probably paying him as much as they were paying head coaches in 2004. And somebody was talking about that Texas A&M is paying, they still owe Jimbo Fisher $80 million. But if they wanted him out bad enough, I think that they would have fired him. So, yeah, I think it was a good hire, man. It was a good hire. It's a really good hire. Another really good hire here. Okay, Luke Fickell. He's going to Wisconsin. This is not good for Ohio State, I'll tell you that. All right. He's the University of Cincinnati coach. Now, they were 13-0 last year. I think they're 9-3. Sauce Gardner went there. Probably going to win Rookie of the Year. That lockdown corner for the Jets. This Fickell's a good coach. I mean, this guy, I looked at his record. I didn't realize how impressive his record is. First year at Cincinnati, he was awful, 4-8. But second year, that's when you really make your bones, right? 11-2, 11-3, 9-1, 13-1. Of course, they lost to Alabama in the playoff game. They're 9-3 this year. That guy's a good coach. Now, he's from Columbus, Ohio, by the way. And you got to ask yourself, what if he starts beating Ohio State with Wisconsin talent? Does Ohio State call him and say, do you want to come home? Do you want to come home for $1.5 million more? I think Fickell could potentially be that good. I mean, I tell you what, they're not an easy out at Cincinnati. Cincinnati is not an easy out. But also, this guy's pretty freaking consistent, man. He is Luke Fickell is a very consistent coach, and of course, the other big hire obviously was Matt Rule. Now, Matt Rule took less money. Something with his contract where he's only the Panthers. The fact that he's already got into the job, they only owe him $12 instead of $40 million, but he wanted to get back into coaching. Matt Rule, the former Carolina Panther NFL coach, now he's got the coach job at Nebraska. He was 10-4 at Temple, 7-1 in conference, 10-3 at Temple last 2 years, 11-3 his last year at Baylor. Got better every year. He trended upwards. Every year at Baylor, he got better. And I like the way he coached. Now, he took the job at Nebraska. Now, that is also in the Big Ten. And I was talking to Jim Jeffcoat and Mac and Jack and Jim Jeffcoat show on Sunday, and Jim was saying it can't be like it used to be. And I said, of course it can be like. It's not going to be Tom Osborne days no more. College football's too spread out. There's less There's less scholarships. There is more that's NIL. There's more TV time. The talent's spread out. So the expectations is not going to be, we need you to be the next Tom Osborne and win back-to-back national championships. It's going to be hard for anybody to do that. Maybe Georgia does it this year, maybe. But the realistic expectations would be to win the Big Ten and give him about 2 to 3 years to do that. Now, you got to beat Michigan. You got to beat this Luke Fickell. Wisconsin's going to be good. Ohio State's still going to be pretty good. But if you can win that or legitimately compete in your conference and eventually get to a playoff, that's a success at Nebraska, in my opinion. In 2020, and I think the fans would understand that. I really do. And I think Matt Rule will get them as close as they're going to get. I think he'll probably do better than Frost and Bo Pelini, the coach before him. Scott Frost was just, the thing about him, he was in Florida. I thought it was Central Florida, South Florida. He had a lot of talent there. He had a lot of in-house. That's why I'm so down on Billy Napier. Because why is UCF and Central Florida, why are these teams getting teams that's beaten Auburn in bowl games, and you can't get all that talent to go to the big school in the middle of the state of Florida, which probably, in my opinion, got the most athletes. It's got the best athletes. But that's close because you're talking Louisiana. Georgia's very good. Very good. And, of course, Texas is very good in Big Two. Pickle says Rule may do very well. I think he'll do well. I think he's a good fit at Nebraska. I think he really likes college football over the pros. And, the truth of the matter is the pros are simply you don't want to work for these crazy owners, Oh, let me throw another one in there. Let me throw another one. Now, going back to Harbaugh, another wild card would be if Mike Tomlin retires. Jeff Tepper seems a little nuts at North Carolina. He's just very competitive. That's the owner of the Carolina Panthers. Jim Irsay is a little nuts at the Colts. He seems a little bit of an overreactor. But Pittsburgh's probably the best job in pro sport. As far as the ownership, patience, just a good place, family environment, good working environment. If Mike Tomlin retires, Jim Harbaugh's very much familiar and in thick with these college quarterbacks. Could you see a Jim Harbaugh working with a Kenny Pickett, who looked pretty good on Monday night? I will say so much. He's looking really good these last 2 weeks. He's looking the part. He's looking the part, Kenny Pickett is. Can you see a Kenny Pickett working with the Jim Harbaugh? Jim Harbaugh will fix that offensive line immediately. He's an offensive-minded head coach, is what they need. He's a vet. He's 58, so he's good for 6-7 years. That is a possible. And Pickle says maybe Tomlin will retire. They haven't fired any coach. They didn't fire Bill Cowher. Chuck Noll, both of those guys retired on their own merit. Maybe Tomlin retires for a year or two and comes back in the pro game, or maybe he goes to college. Tomlin was very young when he got hired. He was in his 30s. He's like 52, 53, but he's human. He's probably burnt out. He went through years of Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger, and some of his ups and downs and dealing with his stuff. Never had a losing season. Probably going to have that losing season this year. I would imagine, But, there's articles out there stating that he may retire this year. There was one odd service that says he may be one of the favorites to get fired, along with another guy in his same division, John Harbaugh. So those jobs will be potentially be available. Baltimore's a great job. Baltimore's a great job. I wouldn't be surprised if they moved on from I wouldn't be surprised if they moved on from Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh, but they still got a really good roster there, a good offensive line, good defensive line, a lot of good players. Made the trade for Roquan Smith. So as far as these college hires, I like all of them. As far as Deion going to Colorado, if I was Deion, I wouldn't take that Colorado job. But he hasn't made a decision yet, going back to him. But I will say this. If he does well at a Pac-12 job, I think that with his baggage, again, with the baggage, save the whole baggage thing. We all got baggage, man. Chris Lowe, SEC writer, got a lot of flack from people on Twitter, go figure, because he said that made that statement about Hugh Freeze. And he's telling the truth because he's been around writing for the SEC for 20-something years, 25. He knows they've all got baggage. But if Deion does well at Colorado, he'll get a big job offer. If Mike Norvell, if he don't improve at Florida State, they've had some big wins this year. They beat Florida. That was a big one, but not too big because Florida lost to Vanderbilt. But if they're not satisfied, I think they'll go after Deion. If I was Deion, I'd probably stay where I'm at. But if he does go to Colorado and he does win, which I think he will, he's only got to compete with the Pac-12. I think he can out-recruit some of these guys, and he's proven to be a good actual coach. He's setting all kinds of records here at Jackson State. And the fact that he's recruiting well and he does coach hard. Like Jim Jeffcoat said about Deion. This guy, he puts on a big show. He's very flashy and flamboyant, but he also studies hard, and he's there late studying. He is no clown when it comes to his work ethic. So I like all the hires to be continued with the Deion hire there. College looks to be very competitive in the Big Ten again, other than the Ryan Day saga. That remains to be seen how that's going to work out. And, of course, again, USA stars make $13 million in total earnings. I guess that was from the soccer thing. Kudos again to USA for beating Iran there. Pickle says front office is steady in Baltimore. I like the owner. I love the front office. I love what Ozzie Newsome built 20 years ago and has passed it down to this staff, and they know how to do it up there in Baltimore. Tomorrow I will be on Andre Gibson here. Very good, man. He's a good guest, really good guy to talk to. We'll go over, ask him about the Titans. I'll ask him about John Harbaugh. And again, we'll ask him about Florida and everything. And I think he sent me a question too. We'll have a little wild card question in there. So if you guys like the show, share the show. I will be back tomorrow, same time, same place here on Sports Scope.